doesn't the Commonwealth already have stacks of experts and committees to give advice in Indigenous affairs? Precisely how would the Voice differ in its approach? Josh, I'm wondering if you can break down that ecosystem of advice in Indigenous affairs that does already exist and how the Voice would work differently.
Yes, the government does have other committees. They have other ways of taking advice or receiving advice or getting reviews done by any number of Commonwealth bodies. Not even just Indigenous specific ones, but they could refer things off to the Law Reform Commission or to things like that for certain topics. But that this would be a specific body that would be empowered through the Constitution to be a permanent advisory body. As far as I know, there aren't bodies that exist like this in the same way that the Voice is sort of I guess envisaged to work.
Amy, do you think there is a risk of the Voice duplicating some of this advice that the government is already getting?
Oh, not at all, because they're not getting any advice. I just wanted to provide some historical context. Like after the abolition of ATSIC, what happened in the vacuum around Indigenous representation was that the OIPC came in to fill that gap. So there was this white voice in Canberra, which represented the Howard government's own interests. And so that is where that idea of having something constitutionally entrenched came about. And in the past, you had the National Congress, which was put in place by Labor, and that was severely underfunded. So it was basically starved before it even could even get up. And that had quite a complicated model as well. So there is actually nothing in Parliament in which you can actually have a voice on a lot of these issues. And when we look in past, like you just look at the anti-intervention legislation, which was passed with 1 day consultation with Aboriginal groups, and that was only because they forced it. There is literally nothing. So people out here saying, well, there's already committees, there's already, even just like the Black Caucus or the Black representation in Parliament, they're there to support their own political parties. And so we have had this absence and this gap since ATSIC, and yet governments still blame ATSIC. So I think that's the other thing we have to be careful of, is that they are going to find a scapegoat and the Voice will be that scapegoat. And so if the Voice does happen, I think it's very important that the Voice garners the respect and the confidence of Aboriginal communities across the country, because it can be another disempowering effect if you have just the replication of the elites up the top, which we see, for example, in universities and everything like that. You have Black representation, but they all get concentrated up the top. So if we are to have a voice, it has to be very important that you had that regional and that local representation.